Welcome to AirplaneProductions Podcast 3. Plenty to talk about in this slightly shorter podcast, so let me just dish away the usual intro titles and get right into it, starting with Boeing. Now, the company is getting more serious about its potential new larger size single aisle to fill the gap left in the Boeing lineup between the MAX 10 and 787, a gap now dominated by the A321XLR. While Boeing hasn't poured huge resources, they have been steadily engaging in smaller steps such as discussions with customers over what they like to see. And most recently, Rolls-Royce has expressed interest in powering the aircraft. For Boeing to justify launching an all-new aircraft, as I said repeatedly last week, the airplane must do more than the competing A321XLR. It must have efficiency and performance not just on par but, at least in my opinion, about 8 to 10% better than the XLR for airlines to justify introducing a new airplane type into their fleet, retrain pilots, crew, and find new parts. Cost is especially an issue given the cash crisis that the pandemic has brought to the industry. And then, of course, there will be the higher cost of a brand new plane. Given Boeing is starting from scratch, the cost of the program, say 10 to 15 billion, typical for any new program, will filter down to passengers. And while Airbus wouldn't release how much they spent on the XLR development, I do estimate it to be less than 1 billion, meaning it can be offered at cheaper prices, which makes it instantly more appealing to airlines. For new aircraft to make sense, fuel burn savings over the XLR should be and must be at least 10 to maybe 15%, which current technologies would make it hard to achieve, but possible. Though the technologies I'm talking about now, the composite airframe, newest wing, a new engine, would increase the price of the airplane. If Rolls were to power the middle market airplane, they would most likely offer their new Ultrafan generation of engine, expected by 2025, meaning its entry into service date is not far off the EIS of whatever new airplane Boeing is planning here. It should deliver the next step change in fuel efficiency with at least 25% cut in the fuel burn compared to previous generation engines. It's not one engine but a new generation or new family of engines that will deliver 25% lower fuel burn through three key areas. Higher bypass and pressure ratios is first. With pressure ratios targeted at 70 to 1, it's by far the highest in the industry. To put things in perspective, the highest pressure ratio right now, the GE9X, only has 60 to 1. Such high pressures would require a new generation of stronger but lighter materials. Number 2, a scalable gearbox to drive the fan. Rolls plans to adapt this engine technology to different thrust category, from 25,000 up to 110,000 pounds of thrust, powering single aisles to the largest of the large wide bodies. It is probably worth noting though that the efficiency gains at different power levels would vary compared to current technology. What I mean is that given how large this engine would be with a proposed 140-inch fan, if used on a single aisle with say 35,000 pounds of thrust, the fuel savings would definitely be less than if used on a wide body at about 70,000 pounds of thrust. When installed on a middle market airplane, say a large single aisle, I would expect the fuel burn saving over CFM LEAP to be at least 18 to 20%. Thirdly, it features the variable pitch fan system where the fan blades of the engines will be able to adjust their angle inside the cowling, something like when the turboprop goes into reverse thrust. This means no thrust reverser doors will be needed. Now let's talk about how the industry is responding to this. And there are two camps here, the new airplane camp and the it's simply not right time camp. For me, I'm for the latter for a couple of reasons, but let's go over the business case for and against such an aircraft right now. For yes, Boeing should, it's simply the fact that given how large this market would be, Boeing is losing a large chunk of potentially about 3 to 5,000 orders. A brand new airplane after the MAX returns could help repair Boeing's reputation in the industry, which right now is in bad health. For against, some argue the technology simply aren't out there yet for Boeing to justify a clean sheet fuselage and $10 billion price tag. And there's simply the state of the product portfolio given the MAX 10 is yet to fly. And this new airplane would definitely cannibalize MAX 10 sales. In my view, Boeing is unlikely to launch this airplane to at least end 2021 or early 2022 earliest, after the MAX 10 enters service for about half to 1 year. Only then will more serious discussions and negotiations start. Moving on, and talks about Southwest ordering Airbus aircraft are once again floating around. Southwest and all 737 operators since the start had most recently started looking into replacements for its 737-700s, the smallest airplanes in its fleet. While the A220-300 cannot replace all 737s, it can replace the smallest ones and be more efficient while doing so, given its newer design and the fact it was purpose-built to be a smaller airplane. Even the Southwest chief exec said that, quote, "We do absolutely need a smaller airplane. We have a ton of 737-700s that are coming up for retirement in the next several years." As of now, there are 421 737s in service with Southwest, and these with their older generation engines are less efficient than the newest A220 or Boeing's proposal for Southwest, the MAX 7. So, Airbus or Boeing? Well, it's not impossible for a US airline to pick the Airbus over the Boeing. Back in 2018, a fierce competition started between Boeing and back then Bombardier over the sale of C-Series airplanes to Delta, and Delta eventually picked the C-Series or the A220 now over the MAX 7 as they felt the MAX 7 was too big to replace their smallest airplanes with excessive range. So it will be a tough battle again, hopefully with no tariffs, but there are already upsides and downsides with going with Airbus. The downside, given Southwest would only have MAX 8 airplanes in service going into the future, by going with the MAX 7, pilots will be able to share the same type rating between both MAX airplanes, while the same engines and many structural parts will reduce maintenance costs. Also, with much of the ground equipment of Southwest supporting only 737 airplanes, introducing a new aircraft type would come at some cost, but that cost could well be worth it. Here are the upsides. The A220 is simply a better aircraft. It's the same size but without the additional range of MAX 7 given it's designed specifically for the regional short to medium range routes with seating for 135 to 3,400 nautical miles. MAX 7 seats about 140, so pretty similar but flies to 3,850 nautical miles. Both seating configurations are in 2 class. Southwest simply may not need the extra range of the MAX 7, and this extra range comes at the cost of efficiency. No matter whatever figure Boeing presents, let's be real here. The A220 is simply more efficient than the MAX 7, given its purpose built to serve this market rather than just being a shrink with lost fuselage space of the MAX 8. This means it's heavier and less efficient over short routes. It will be a tough choice, and I would say if Airbus could match Boeing's offer, the chances of a Southwest Airbus are at 50-50. Southwest is rumored to place an order by end 2021, with delivery starting in 2025. Moving back to the present, and Turkish Airlines has taken delivery of its first A350. First flights will be between Istanbul and Ankara, starting October 28 to November 2020. Following this, the A350 will be used on routes to hubs such as London Heathrow and Dubai, Los Angeles, and finally Seoul Incheon for now. The order was first confirmed back on the 9th of October 2018, and Turkish plans to take 25 firm with 5 options. They also placed the 787-9 orders back around the same time in March, but have already taken 14 of those aircraft. Still, both are the next generation of fuel-efficient long-range airplanes. 20% low fuel burn per trip for the 787 against A330 or 767, and 25% low fuel burn per trip than 777 for the A350. Given Turkish is a large long-range hub airline, the reduced fuel costs would help them recover post-pandemic. While it's not confirmed by any source, I reckon the 777-300ERs and A330s would be nearing retirement soon, and the new 787s and A350s would be an ideal replacement. Meanwhile, in terms of the MAX re-entry, American is now planning customer tours of the MAX ahead of its first scheduled MAX flight starting 29th of December. American has been the most aggressive of all MAX operators when it comes to re-entry into service of the MAX, with the airline being the first and so far as of time of upload only to schedule MAX flights. They are confident that the aircraft will be certified to fly by the end of the year, having scheduled the new mandatory simulator training for all pilots. According to American Airlines CEO, he said, quote, "We are seeing that finish line approaches and I think it's a real finish line." In terms of the tours, American will allow some customers a chance to have a look at the aircraft at their hubs such as Dallas, Fort Worth, LaGuardia, and Miami. Pilots would have virtual sessions with passengers. American would allow customers booked on the MAX to switch bookings to another airplane and will alert passengers that they are flying on a MAX. In terms of the re-entry, I reckon it will happen slowly across the globe, not least given low demand of air travel in the Southeast Asian market. It will probably return first in America, then Europe as well as other airlines, and then Chinese airlines. This is all speculation and not verified. Southwest, on the other hand, has not scheduled any MAX flights but speculates it will be back by the second quarter of 2021. In some airline news, let's talk about the recovery of airlines post-pandemic. So far, the Asia-Pacific region has been hardest hit, and new airline startup Starlux is hoping to bring back the aviation market, in Taiwan at least, with 3 new international flights. They are planning to launch flights to Bangkok, Osaka, and Tokyo in December with their new small but efficient A321neos. December 1st will see routes to Bangkok take off, December 15 for flights to Osaka, and 16 to Narita. This is a good move by the airline. Though many doubted their survival, they are back and competing against China Airlines and EVA Air, which as far as I'm aware of have started flights to Bangkok for EVA, but haven't heard much else from these two airlines. I will also talk about what needs to be done for the aviation industry to recover post-pandemic, especially in the Asia-Pac region, by far the hardest hit, so do stay tuned for that in a separate video. In other news, ANA is planning to start a new low-cost long-haul airline, an airline positioned in between the full-service carrier of ANA flying short domestic, long regional, and long-haul, as well as its other brand, Peach Airways, a low-cost short-haul airline. According to ANA, this is in response to a travel landscape drastically reshaped by COVID. ANA has said it would be a hybrid airline, which typically haven't gotten off to the best start. But anyways, it will probably operate longer flights with 787 airplanes with 2 class of about 300 seats and above. So most likely the Dash 8 or Dash 9 in a configuration similar to Norwegian or Scoot, though no details on the cabin have been revealed. The airline is set to take off in financial year 2022. This will be a long-haul only airline, with the medium-haul flights done by Peach, their full low-cost short-haul airline already flying with their new A321LR airplanes. So what's my take on this? Well, All Nippon seems to be going against the trend of most other airlines, streamlining their brand portfolio to make it as cost-efficient as possible. We have already seen Tiger Air and Scoot merge in 2017, with the former being a short-haul budget airline and latter being a medium to long-haul budget airline. That was made to streamline the airline's short and long-haul fleets. The SIA Group also recently announced a merger of Silk Air and Singapore Airlines to cut costs, as operating many airlines can be expensive. Another airline in Asia, Cathay, also most recently did the same. Is starting this all-new airline a good move? In my opinion at least, probably not, but oh well, the airline would still be started, so yeah. I guess it will be simpler and cheaper for Peach to inherit the 787s, as it will give Peach Airlines greater flexibility within the fleet. For example, some medium-haul routes flown with A321LR could have high demand and could need a 787 in the future, in which case Peach would have to call on Air Japan to serve a market it's already had, which would be more complicated than just deploying the 787 within Peach's own fleet. By expanding the reach of Peach, okay, that was really bad. With new, more fuel-efficient airplanes, Peach would be able to deploy the right size airplane on the right routes all within the same airline. Also, the marketing, recruiting of new crew would cost them money, while passengers may be confused between Air Japan, Japan Airlines, and ANA. The airline would have to promote itself, and advertisement campaigns would cost money. Plus, obviously, even if crew were transferred from ANA, which right now could actually prove to save jobs given these crew may be surplus crew members not flying anywhere due to low demand from the pandemic, their uniforms would need to be redesigned, and so on and so forth. Plus, training would need to be provided to train them to maybe new service protocols. So, probably not a good move.